Good morning, Draft Bible disciples. How's everybody this morning? I hope you're up and awake and have you poured your cup of coffee. Maybe you're a tea guy. I don't know. Whatever you need hot to drink, and let's get it on. It's John Murphy and David Turner filling in for the RIC again. Again, never filling the seat, just filling the seat, never the shoes. We miss you. Have heavy hearts for you this morning, RIC and the family. You know, we can't wait to have you back and your energy and all you bring to the table. We know you'll be here soon. But good morning, John. How are you?
Doing good. I guess at least he didn't fall any further behind. We both had the Ravens last night, so I don't get to clear the bench just yet on them, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
Couple more. What's the tally marks up to? What are the tally marks up to?
I'm gonna let him. I'm giving a couple days to do some extra math. I'm gonna say I'm up somewhere in the 8 to 10 range.
Ooh. Wow, almost double digits on him.
Could be. It's all but to be honest, it's all by 5 or less. He's the Anthony Lynn of making picks.
I mean, seriously, can the Chargers lose any more close games? I mean, wow. I mean, they've been in
a different direction this week.
Well, they did this week, obviously, 45 to nothing. They made it clear and defined. This one was a good loss right here. Yeah.
But we can't live with any more of those losses, so we'll just not get it that close.
We just won't show up. Yeah, we'll just, we'll stay on the bus. Yeah, absolutely. 45 to 0. I mean, you had a good take on it. I can't remember if it was on the show or, it was somewhere, but you were talking about how Anthony Lynn hired some friends instead of, interviewing coaching candidates. And I think that'll be something maybe we get into a little bit later about this coaching carousel and how the hiring process will go. But I do want to lead with a story that's just got me fascinated. And that's Ohio State having enough games to qualify for the Big Ten championship game and bowl games. What is going to happen there, in your opinion? What do you think? I mean, honest to God, what do you really think is going to happen with this scenario going on?
Yeah, I mean, so now you're, we talked about it, or we joked about it, yesterday, saying, let's see what happens, the rest of the week. Well, we didn't even get to the rest of the week. By yesterday afternoon, we found out two things that, Michigan was not going to move forward because of the COVID issues. So now you have, a 5-0 Buckeyes team that needs an opponent, to get to the 6-game mark. Are they going to get literally a volunteer, from the conference? That's kind of what they need. What do they do with that? Because, do they adjust things to get Ohio State to that 6 so that they face, Northwestern next week? If they don't, it's basically probably going to be Iowa. If they win this week, Iowa could slide in there, and suddenly your title game is Iowa against Northwestern, which not only will create an issue there, but subsequently will then put either Florida, if they get by LSU and could beat Alabama, it potentially gives Texas A&M a way to squeeze into that 4 spot. And it doubles down to say Alabama potentially could lose to Florida, which would get Florida in and still make it. And if you had another close Clemson-Notre Dame game, there's a chance that either one of them could stay in the top 4. So if Clemson
Yeah, I was going to say, it's interesting. The Twitterverse blew up yesterday on wanting, because Texas A&M has an open weekend this weekend. So they're all, hey, let's go A&M versus Ohio State this weekend. But that wouldn't even help Ohio State to get into the Big Ten championship game because they don't have 6 conference game, right? Right. So now you're asking for someone to pay tribute, like to lay down and give them the 6th win. How much is Ohio State going to pay for that team to come lay down for them?
Yeah, I mean, they could do what the Pac-12, did there when they said, okay, hey, under the circumstances, it's another, you get a game and, and it's good to go. Now, where's the advantage for Ohio State? I know you got to get there to, get a win to get there. That would really be more Texas A&M, nothing to lose because you're on the outside. Right? Now, do you do it if you're Ohio State? Hey, you could do like last week, right? The Chanticleers had nothing to lose. They were at home. They had an open date. And BYU said, well, we're swinging for the fences to try to, to make some noise and get a top 25, top 15 win, at that point and try to get themselves closer, to the mix because, hey, like I said, we'll talk about it later in the week. Cincinnati is playing Tulsa. So that's not a walkover game, that Cincinnati is just winning. Florida has LSU that looks like it's a pit stop on the way to Alabama, in there. So, A&M now, no game against Ole Miss, that they could have used because that probably would have been, a W for them. So that is an interesting idea. To me, it's a no-brainer if you're if you're Texas A&M. If you're Ohio State and literally by today, because that's right. Last week it was Wednesday or Thursday when BYU and found out that there was an opening and Liberty and the Chanticleers. I think last Wednesday it was suspect, and then Thursday it was out, and then by the next 24 hours suddenly we had the Mullets versus the Mormons. And away we go. Is this something that Ohio State and Texas A&M could do? You would think. That they don't play in the same conference. They've rarely had bowl game matchups or things like that. So there should be no animosity and a lot of dollars at stake. So even though it seems like that's not something that principally could happen, there's a lot of money at stake, which means we'll likely see something like that happen. So
well, yeah, I mean, think about it. This would be the primetime game of the week, highest viewed game of all that's going to be matched up this weekend. I mean, think about it. If you put these two powerhouses in a flex schedule matchup against each other, boom. Now you got primetime TV. Everybody's tuned in to watch this heavyweight bout. So, I think for me, I see the Big Ten committees meeting today to see if they're going to bend the rules or not. I would think Iowa is politicking. No, we can't bend the rules. We need them to go out and stay on the outside.
It is kind of funny because the selection chairman is Gary Barta, who is the AD at Iowa.
Exactly. Yeah. So you got to think Iowa is not an impartial judge right now. They're definitely like, nope, we're not waiting anything. We want that championship game for ourselves, right?
Yeah, so I think that that's kind of interesting. Like I said, I mean, it does open, funny that not for any reason. On paper or anything, but the Big Ten, where Iowa could then be facing Northwestern, could actually do their hometown rival a solid because Iowa then taking, over for Ohio State would actually then give Iowa State the little shot, the, possibility that they could jump from 7 or 8 into this mix. Should Cincinnati lose, should an A&M team not get enough wins, or something like that, there's definitely an interesting scenario here because I think A&M has to find a game because you don't have this one. You don't have the matchup because it's going to be Florida, Alabama. You're going to be kind of the team that could be kind of like stuck here with no way to get a lift off of spot 5. And more importantly, Cincinnati's playing Tulsa. That is a ranked team. And again, like I said, I'm not sure that Tulsa is not going to give them a real run for their money, and push them in that game. Iowa State. If Iowa State comes back and beats Oklahoma a second time, and you're still sitting there at 5-1, and now they're at 9-2, that's 5-1, 9-2 is kind of an interesting mathematical debate, to have there. So Iowa, if it's Iowa and Northwestern, regardless of which one of those two wins, great, that's getting you to the Rose Bowl. But the team or a benefactor there could be, the Iowa State, could be a team there, depending on how this weekend goes, that is kind of sitting in a favorable spot if they handle their own business, because playing an Oklahoma team that's as hot as they are, is going to give you, a possibility to bump yourself, to kind of be that wild card team there. But I would then go back to the first part of the statement, which was, as good as Iowa State has been, that one extra loss on your record is what's going to get you, because Florida beats Alabama. It would probably be a 45-42, right? You imagine, that would be the kind of game it would be. I don't think Alabama then slides out of the top 4 that way. If the Clemson matchup with Notre Dame is another all the way to the finish, and this time it goes the other way, I think Notre Dame would still be number 3 or 4 and not lose out to A&M with a 1 loss, because then both of their 1 losses are going to be the top, 3 teams. A&M would have lost to Alabama and Notre Dame would have split with Clemson. I think the most interesting one is if Notre Dame doubles down, does a 2-loss Clemson team get in above a 5-1 Texas A&M? That to me would be the most interesting voting part of it. Or a 2-loss Clemson, and it's against the same team that's in the top 3. Are they getting in over Cincinnati, A&M, Florida, type, a 2-loss team, or an undefeated Cincinnati?
Yeah, so what I'm hearing, John, is Texas A&M needs to be on the phone, dialing up Ohio State, pounding the table to get them to take this game and get on a plane and go up there and play Saturday.
Yeah, like who else is available? Can you get, it's, because of what I said, you have this weekend, but if I'm not mistaken, A&M will have that, they're going to have that open weekend because, Alabama and Florida will be playing. Do they need to find, a matchup, somewhere in that mix? I guess.
Well, if you take the AP poll, if you take the AP poll, like you said, Cincinnati, they got Tulsa. You got Indiana. What about would a Texas A&M and Miami try to find a way to play? And was that a big enough game to push A&M up? Would it play?
Now we're seeing. I'm just seeing this morning, Dave, that Indiana and Purdue has been called off. The Cincinnati Tulsa game now has even been canceled.
Oh wow! Wow, that's breaking news, huh? Cincinnati Tulsa game canceled. Wow, that's big breaking news right there.
So again, just for argument's sake, regionally, it would give A&M and Tulsa a chance to play. And regionally, if the Big Ten wanted to think outside the box, you would have another real game of the week, Ohio State and Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So, hey, Ohio State, Big Ten, you want to put your you-know-whats on the table, do it against Cincinnati. Undefeated Cincinnati against Ohio State. You want to talk about?
Yeah, you got 8-0 versus 5-0. That would be good. That would be good.
A former Ohio State head coach. You want to give Luke Fickell his shot. Against you. I know it's tough. That's a tough thing to do. Like that. That'd be a kind of an interesting audience in the room to see if they could put aside their recruiting differences, and allow something that would be good for the bigger picture.
Yeah, and you got to think Fickell is chomping at the bits for that one. Ooh. But I guess we got to dive into why was it COVID at Tulsa, COVID at, which program canceled because of COVID? Why did this Tulsa matchup and get canceled to try to figure this out? Because if it was the Cincinnati's had a flare of COVID, then that doesn't. But it does. I love what you're thinking, because if Fickell had a chance to go back to Ohio State and just lay the smacketh down on them for not for letting him go, I think that would be a great motivator. A lot of headlines with that matchup there, John. That honestly would be an amazing matchup. And then like you said, if you could somehow figure out A&M and Tulsa, that would get. I don't know if Tulsa. I'll be honest with you, I don't know if at 18, 6-1 Tulsa gives the edge to Texas A&M to push up into it. I see like more a Miami or Indiana type game, or a Cincinnati game, someone in the top 10 to push them up and break it. I'm not trying to disrespect Tulsa in any way with that. I just know how these voters go when they say, well, if you beat an 8 or a 10 versus a 18, it just is going to be better on your perception and viewpoint. And again, that's no disrespect to Tulsa. They're having an amazing year, and again, like you said, if they line up, they're going to give anybody a good game. So that would be interesting. We're going to have to dive more into that maybe tomorrow's show, and we'll see how this unfolds with the news the rest of the day. But with the current news on there, let's go ahead to this Michigan scenario that's going on. Is Harbaugh staying? Are they firing him? More rumors out they've already offered him an extension for lower pay and some rules that are going to be imposed upon him. Then I'm hearing NFL teams have already reached out to talk to them about getting Harbaugh away from Michigan. Why is everybody so hot about Harbaugh when the guy hasn't won a big game, I don't think, in his whole career?
I still think people are seeing what happened with the Niners. The success with Kaepernick, definitely probably weighs in on, some people's minds. And, hey, when you've had success in other places and you go to the type of job he went to, obviously the success isn't there, in the biggest matchups, and then even losing, games to Michigan State at home, at losing, to India, like you've just sort of not seen it all come together. And it becomes probably one of those things of, hey, it was a lifelong dream. I wanted to do it. I pursued it. It hasn't gone, according to plan, and either they're going to double down with a different plan because they want a Michigan man in the job, or he's going to say, hey, kind of this is my opportunity, to get out. I can in the COVID season and, the quarterback recruiting and lose a guy last minute, in Dylan McCaffrey, there. So I had to go with an unproven guy, and stuff like that. So, I think there's some room for either side to back off each other and then, just move on. For Michigan, I think it'll be an equally, daunting task, in terms of who's that next guy, where are you finding them? You've kind of gone down the same rabbit hole 3 different ways, and it's not resulted, with things, Rich Rod, that didn't, didn't really go, and now we're here, on the back end of things with Harbaugh, and you're still sort of, lingering, in these scenarios, and like it or not, and again, tremendous respect for where the program is at today and really where it's headed again with Schiano. Man, you got to look at that if you're Michigan, that you had to go to overtime with Rutgers. You had to go to overtime with Rutgers. You had to play Penn State, a 4-quarter game, who are terrible this year. Nothing's coming easy, there at Michigan. And it just seems like, there's a reboot or a reset with, you look at Missouri, with bringing a coach, Drinkwitz in from, App State, like a younger coach, a different tempo or upbeat scenario for the program. And I think that's, a possibility of, look what happened at Indiana. Look at what's happening in places at times, Minnesota, Purdue, Iowa, just look at the rest of your conference. And, they've had to make those tough changes and adjustments to, today's game. And it just makes you wonder if Michigan is still kind of, living in that 1970 to 1990, version of what college football is, as opposed to, kind of where it's gone right now.
Yeah. And I guess my thing is, I don't know I don't get why everybody's attracted to Harbaugh. Since Stanford, and even at the Niners, yeah, he had success. I'm not going to deny he had some success, but it wasn't like he has a bunch of Super Bowl rings on his fingers. He wasn't there winning rings left and right. I mean, he had success. He did some good things, and now at Michigan, he's been very limited. I mean, the big games, he's always not been. He's been outcoached in the big games. And therefore, I don't understand why everybody's like, oh, we need to go get Harbaugh to be back in the NFL, or, Michigan can get rebuilt with Harbaugh. Like, I just don't get why everybody's so excited about this guy still. I think his track record, starting to get tarnished. I don't think it's as golden boy as it once was. And, if he does go to an NFL team, though, John, let's take that road with the openings that are currently available. Which team do you think would be a good suitor for John Harbaugh right now with what these teams are facing and the rebuilds that they are?
Yeah, I said surprisingly, it's not, if you were winning, if you had Michigan in the top, 5, it'd be an easy slide to say slide them right down there to Detroit. I'm going to say that. I would say more if Harbaugh is going to get interviewed and there's openings at these spots, maybe a little bit with the Jets, but it would be interesting to see him with that media. We'll see. But I'm saying maybe more of a Chicago, Cincinnati, scenario. One, because you're talking about the quarterback situation and matching him with. Burrows might be something that they see, as a successful, route to take. And the other one would be, hey, you got to believe that that's still going to be the direction in terms of an offensive style, guy that Cincinnati's going to say, we still have the defense, Chicago, excuse me. We still have the defense. It's the offense with who we're going to have at quarterback and having an offensive minded coach. To me, those two teams will look at guys like a Harbaugh, what happens with Peterson kind of at year's end. They're going to be looking for an offensive coach, and I don't think it's going to be the type of guy that's just somebody that's outside the box, there where I could see the Cowboys after what you watched last night, just how they're playing. If he's not visiting Lincoln Riley on the regular, like you can tell that needs a reboot in terms of they need that installation of somebody who's going to be more up-tempo, bring that Kyle Shanahan, McVay kind of attitude or approach where, Dallas is down 3 scores last night with 10 minutes to go, and they're huddling. They're walking up to the line of scrimmage. There's no tempo. There's no, it's like you just resign to the fact that you suck. And I know you're getting paychecks, but forget about the 300 yards rushing against them. Just that lack of tempo and the lack of awareness, to the situation. It's funny to say that your season was still on the line last night against the Ravens, but it was. It was still on the line. The Eagles are going nowhere fast and are making a quarterback change and playing the Saints. Right? The Giants just won a big road game, and so did the Redskins. That should encourage you that you can get out of your hole. That to me was a very depressing sight. If you're involved, with the Cowboys, you got to really be up this morning going. Number one, is Mike McCartney the right guy for the job? And more importantly, does he still want the job?
Yeah,
and
he's not even coaching. He's not coaching like he wants the job anymore.
And I know that's
he's
terrible.
Coaching like he's beat down,
Yeah, I know that's terrible. That's a terrible, thing to say. But, I see more fight out of Mike Nolan, who knows he's a dead man walking. I see more fight out of Nolan trying to correct things, trying to live with, a 4-3 group of guys that he's trying to play a 3-4 scheme, with knowing that he's beating a dead horse and that he's going to have to be coaching linebackers again somewhere, but, I think the Harbaugh thing is interesting because it's still the name recognition, the factor that people thought he was a hot name. Somebody's going to believe that there's still something there. But, the proof right now is that what you're saying might be more correct. There might be a lot more mediocrity, in somebody's future, by going after Harbaugh. I think there's other guys on the market. I think there'll be some other people that either would get jobs over him or that surprisingly will come out that some teams are more interested in them than a Harbaugh. But, a Cincinnati, if you make the money move and Harbaugh really wants to go to the NFL and get out of Michigan, then it's not going to be all about this big paycheck, like it was going to Michigan. The Jets are an interesting group. We'll see what they have to say in that time frame and who Joe Douglas kind of favors, in that moment. But I also, like I said, Chicago, he's a Midwest guy, played, with the Colts. They need an offense to kind of get settled. Can you think that he could do some things? Possibly. But I don't think he's just going to be the 5-star, the gold standard in terms of who's available this offseason.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Bears and the Cowboys are for people that, know the inner circles and workings of those teams. Harbaugh makes sense because those are teams that typically like to get a name, but at a reduced price. That even when they hired Parcells back in the day, the Cowboys didn't pay top dollars for him because he wasn't the hot ticket at the time, right? So they like to get the name at a reduced price, and a Harbaugh down it. And he'll be paying Mike McCarthy. I think McCarthy got a 4-year deal or something, so he's still going to be paying him 3 years. So I think Harbaugh might make sense down there in Dallas, but I really like what you're saying about, making sense there in Chicago. It's an easy hire. It's right down the road. I think Chicago might even give him a little say on who the GM would be, which is something I know Harbaugh wants. Where the Jets, if they do stick with Douglas, it's going to be Douglas, and that'll be a situation where Harbaugh is walking in with a GM already in place, which was a problem with him and Balky in San Francisco. So maybe the Bears seem like right now the best matchup situation. Kind of marriage, maybe even you call it, to Harbaugh. Marrying into the Harbaugh family would be the Chicago Bears. So that's an interesting conversation. Hey, Robin, I see you in the chat room. Hey, we are live. If all the viewers have any questions about what we're talking about, throw it in the chat. We'll get to it. John Murphy, David Turner here on the State of Football State of the Union 93. State of Football 93, keeping it going, keeping it alive and rolling. So if you got anything you need to know, you want to know, throw it in here. JM and I are on premises, ready to answer your questions. I do want to move on to an interesting conversation. This weekend, the AD at Georgia voiced his displeasure for the cancellation of all these games. His team's been doing it right. They're ready to play. They're ready to go. Other, campuses have had games canceled on them. We just talked about Cincinnati and Tulsa getting canceled, right? And now you're Tulsa and you're a team that's sitting ready to go, and Cincinnati's not. In the NFL, they've done a lot of work to get all these games played and rescheduled and all this stuff. In college football, we're seeing cancellations happen because certain campuses can't do what's right and can't keep their boys, in bed at night. Those bed checks aren't being good, and this COVID situation is running wild. With Georgia's AD, what is there or anything that we should be like penalties or anything going on for the colleges having to cancel these and seeing repeat offenders like Michigan that is canceling multiple games, and now it's affecting Ohio State and other programs? I mean, one-offs is one-offs, but multiple games being canceled. Is there something that should be done to these teams? Is there a penalty or something that should happen because they're not making sure that these games are getting pulled off?
I mean, which way you want to go here? Politically correct or?
Well, hey, now we're all incorrect. Like
politically correct or rant.
Go for it, baby. Let it off. Take the top off. Let's get loose.
Again, it boils down to the thing of, at certain points, you're I know it's not amateur. You
right?
are amateur. It is an amateur sporting events that we are not being able to schedule. You're not professional. If I'm paying an athlete in the NFL, that means that my expectation is he knows to stay away. Like we mentioned at Thanksgiving, don't go to grandma's house. Stay out of the family Thanksgiving party. Don't go do things, that we've asked you not to do. If I have kids on campus and 100-player college football team, the mere factor that we're playing more games than we're not is actually quite surprising and quite the pull off by all of these teams and the NCAA, that we are playing more games than we're not on a weekly basis, because the number of levels of interaction that the college kids, student athletes, are taking, they might be doing their classes on Zoom, but they're not doing their workouts on Zoom. They're not eating on Zoom. And their physical interaction in just living normal everyday life on a college campus, forgetting about saying that they're partying or that they're not doing what they need to be doing after hours. The physical interaction with folks on a college campus is such that they're having to go do laundry, they're having to go get food, they're having to go live their lives. So the factor is, it's not going to be, if they broke it down and had a questionnaire or had somebody fill out how they got COVID on a college campus, it's not all going to just be black and white, that you don't have control of your team or your campus or your situation. Sorry, Georgia. I don't think it's the same as, the penalties, for the Raiders or the Titans or the Saints, in this scenario. You tried playing amateur sports during a pandemic with a bunch of kids that were at home, stuck in their mom's basement, stuck back in their room, then got moved back to their dorms with a little bit of freedom. Even if it's restricted freedom, guess what? You're going to have situations arise pretty much no matter what. So complaining that you're sliding in the rankings when you don't play, well, I got an idea for you. When you play against better teams, don't get drove by 40. There's an idea. Here's an idea to not worry about what happens in the games you don't play. Win the ones when you do play. Then you don't have to be complaining. But it's happened, I think, in so many different areas that, like I said, the mere factor that we're playing more college football games on a weekly basis than we're not, you have to say it's worked as good as you could have fundamentally hoped or expected. And everybody's having issues, right? Miami lost Al Blades Jr. yesterday, right? Goes in, and tests for that myocardiosis, that we've talked about.
Right.
Indiana is ready to play Purdue. They get an issue on campus. Cincinnati now evidently is the one that had a couple of tests, positive, and that's why their game with Tulsa, was canceled. It's evidently a few things on the campus there, at Cincinnati. Last night, if you want to really take this, last night's game, in all reality, I know the NFL is not going to want to hear this. You tested Dez Bryant after he went through pregame.
Mm-hmm.
Dez Bryant's contact tracing at that point was literally everybody in the building. Try to tell me there's not video of Dez Bryant during warmups in Dallas. So you're telling me doing individual warmups with his headset on that he borrowed from you, that he's not walking around, he didn't dap up any of his former teammates? He didn't go have a conversation with anybody on the Cowboys?
Oh, I know. And the NFL put a statement out saying that there was no, direct tracing that was the suspect. And it's like, when I read that statement, I was the same thing as you, John. I was like, you got to be kidding me. He was in the locker room of the Ravens, and now he's on the field at Dallas with these old guys. Like the whole thing is tracing. Like he entered the building, it was tracing.
No, and that's what I said. So how is it less with him than it was 5 minutes ago with all the Broncos quarterbacks.
Yep.
It's
Absolutely.
just it's like, oh, what are you going to do when the camera was on you? What are we going to do? Well, the Ravens didn't bring all their practice roster players, so I guess everybody else can play. Has anybody else got an issue? Now, let's see what happens, and I don't want it to. Knock on wood. Please, for the love of God, do not have any Ravens or Cowboys test positive in the next 3 to 5 days.
Right. Well, the Ravens, I mean, they already had, 20-something guys on the COVID list because of the strength coach, right? Who I still think has a job, which I don't understand that at all. But, we want to rant on something.
Then you won't be, we will not be worried about Dez throwing up the X. We'll be worried about the Ravens throwing up the C.
Right, exactly. I mean, you got a strength coach who walks in the building with symptoms, and then now they had to reschedule 2 NFL games and not cancel them, reschedule them, and play on a Wednesday to accommodate this guy's inability to be an adult and say, hey, I'm not feeling well, I'm going to stay home, boys. Then now Dez Bryant, another Raven, walks on the field and has to in pregame gets pulled off for a COVID positive, and they didn't even talk about him being quarantined. They didn't even talk about anything. They just, he went on Twitter and how am I not to play? What the F and blah blah blah. And it's man.
But I think also it like the thing what we're saying, and all joking aside to the University of Georgia AD is all you got to look at is professional football last night, and that guy has a false positive or a weird whatever result. So then they go back and they find that out in the afternoon. They're like, hey, anybody seen Dez Bryant? We need him again. Oh, shit, he's out on the field warming up early, right? Which is, not to not be expected, right? What time would you show up, if you were Dez Bryant to the Cowboys facility yesterday?
Right.
And stuff like that to get some of that energy out, so that you weren't coming out there just guns blazing, and things. And they bring him in. They tell him about the situation. They retest him. Well, they didn't hold him there while they retested him. They didn't hold him there till they got the result.
Right. And so now he's walking around talking to people.
Well, right, because they said, well, I can't do that if I don't know that he's going to be – I can't hold him. And if he's clear, then I messed him up and he, for game time. So when they found out, then they go grab him and get him out the building, and so on and so forth. So, like I said, to me, when it's coming to, the amateur sports, guess what? 2020 means you get what you get and don't throw a fit. Sorry about that. Sorry about your damn luck, Georgia AD. Sorry about that. And again, I'll finish with this. Best way to not get penalized for the weeks you can't play. Win the games when you can play. So if you got a problem with what happened because you couldn't play and you moved down, you wouldn't have been moving down if you hadn't gotten thumped by Alabama.
Yeah, exactly. And I hear you on that. And I agree. I agree. Like, I'm a big proponent of, hey, we shouldn't even be playing with the kids right now. Because
it sounds, Dave, what are we going to do? It's a college kid. If this is Isaiah Wilson getting in trouble at Georgia, what are they going to penalize him? Take a point off his GPA? Right. What are we penalizing these kids with? Go to your dorm room?
Right?
You can't, they're not paid athletes. And like I said, when you are a paid athlete, the rules and circumstances of the mistakes that people have made are life choices that they decide to go outside the rules that the NFL and those teams have created for them. A college student who you knew for 5 months were shut back home, living in mom's basement, chilling back in their high school bedroom, doing nothing. When you brought them back on campus, the assumed risks that you brought with them was they got cabin fever worse than anybody. And like I said, you're doing Zoom in your room all day for your classes and for, working with your coaches and in your meetings and whatever. you're not doing Zoom workouts. They didn't bring all the weights to their individual rooms and tell them to work out in their room, right? They're not doing Zoom laundry. Last time I looked, they got to go somewhere to on campus or in their dorm to do that. They got to eat. They're all going to the little 7-Eleven to buy their stuff. Like even if you're just chilling, you don't even have to be doing something negative. You cannot tell me that we're going to police these kids above and beyond so that one day a week, everybody's eligible to play a game. It's a nice idea. But like I said, the factor that we're still going to play, 70 or 80% of the total, games, that we're not having a mass failure here where we're playing 2 games a week per conference because, all the rest of the games are shut down. I think, like I said, is it harmful? Is it distressful if you were sitting there? But are you really, I know we're talking about practice, but are you really sitting here as the AD of a university and you're complaining because you dropped X number of spots in the AP poll because you didn't play a game? Is that what you're complaining about in 2020? Okay, great. Let me get the list out. It ends up at about 1,311 on the complaint list for the year of 2020. Georgia AD moved down 3 spots, bitching about his schedule and his opportunity. That's a come on, man, if I've ever heard it.
I agree with you. That is a come on, man. Like you said, this is college football. This is kids. You're talking about bowl rankings and stuff in 2020. There are so many bigger things to be talking about, But now let's move it on to something that was interesting that came out of the Mormons versus the Mullets game. And a lot of people are talking about this in the Twitterverse and on social media and even in the mainstream media is Zach Wilson. Did his draft stock drop a little with his performance there at Coastal Carolina versus the Chanticleers with this not a blockbuster performance from him? Did he slide? As one for me, who I'm not a huge Zach Wilson fan, everybody knows that already. I've put it out there. I think this is overly harsh for people to think that this kid who came in and his coaching staff with like a 48-hour warning to play a game, he didn't have time to study his tape. He didn't have time to do all the week pregame prep that he would normally do for an opponent. Now he gets thrown into a game. It's like, everybody just thinks they just roll out the footballs and you play a game and you should be, a Heisman candidate no matter what. I just think this is overly harsh, John. In my opinion, I think, Zach's getting graded too hard on this one game for this one afternoon of work that was really thrust upon him in almost 48 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple things. One time that you got to see him in a scenario where he didn't look comfortable. He wasn't on rhythm. It was not, what you were looking for, in terms of, results. But then again, I said at the same time, there's a few moments where he kind of sheds the good guy, all-American look. And, when the Chanticleers were barking, he's, probably saying a few things that ended up with some swear jar money, being owed. And then I like the final drive, that he's in, he's got composure. Their season's on the line. He brings them all the way down the field. And I think it's been mentioned or, recognized the end of that game was very similar to the Rams-Titans Super Bowl.
Yes, it's been mentioned. It's been compared. Absolutely.
With similar play call and similar result, although I think in this scenario, BYU is kind of maybe a yard short instead of an inch short, of the goal line. But I think what happened here, and I can definitely say, for myself, what I would come away from this with, and if Big Law's listening, I'm sure he'll bring it back up later on in the week, is this is more the respect due to Coastal Carolina. This is more that Jamie Caldwell and his staff, getting there, became the third head coach, of the team, January 18th, 2019. Now let that sit in, right? This was a guy that was coaching, in the FCS, in the Big South, and done great things at that level. comes to Coastal Carolina, and we're not even, 12 full months, past it being into his, career there, and they now pull off a win like that at home, have themselves where they're ranked. You see how these kids are playing for that team. And I think, two of the most astonishing things are, that offensive line is literally like one guy with a little bit of size, and then it's 6 foot and under for life. Right? There's not a guy.
Oh yeah, they got some players that I would be eye to eye with,
Yeah, he's he came from the Big South, and it looks like he brought his O-line with him. So he's playing with those guys. And then, Teron Jackson, we saw the great video of him getting introduced, with his Senior Bowl invite in front of his teammates the week before. But the Jerry Gunter kid on the other side was playing his off all afternoon. He's in the backfield as much as any of the BYU offensive players, throughout their game. Their DBs are contesting those passes. And more importantly, you saw every play that BYU ran to either side of the field. There are 5, 6, and 7 teal jerseys hauling ass on that side of the field. So to me, this was more, both teams had the same opportunity. Yes, BYU had to travel, and it's on short notice. Their coaching staff said, of course, you notice teams like, we saw a little bit of them. We knew a little bit of what they were doing. I don't think you were prepared for it. And what you really were not prepared for was that Coastal Carolina was able to control the 2 lines of scrimmage, control the game clock with their running game, have a freshman quarterback who made no mistakes, and then play that style of defense. You know what? It was like a match made in heaven on a Thursday night in Piscataway, or, going and playing a Sun Belt game, on a Thursday, and you're a middle to bottom SEC or ACC team, and you kind of go into that hornet's nest. To me, that it was very reminiscent of watching, a Thursday night game at Virginia Tech back in the day, or that Rutgers Thursday or Friday night, game where, you're just it was a perfect storm for what needed to happen. And to me, I'm more looking at from the positive of hats off to Big Law for saying the Yardbirds were not going to get roasted, and hats off to Jamie Caldwell and that coaching staff, because, the performance that team put on, really justifies their ranking. And I think it'll be really interesting to see how creative the NCAA and Coastal Carolina and these other teams can be to say, would you like to see a Power 5? Would you like to see a 5-0 Ohio State play the Chanticleers in a bowl game? Would you like to see Florida if they don't make it? Would you like to see undefeated non-Power 5 Cincinnati and the Chanticleers, battle for who doesn't have to be told they're a non-Power 5 for a year? So it's kind of be very interesting to see, which thing they do. If this is wrestling, are you giving them the kind of the Intercontinental belt, or are you letting them fight for the championship, even though they may not be the household name? It's going to be real interesting to see what you do with the Chanticleers, because I thought after last week, it's well earned for them to be given another shot against another one of the big boys. And let's see what happens, when you double down and give them another shot. But I'll tell you what, that championship game, 10-1, Louisiana Lafayette against the Chanticleers is going to be a hell of a matchup.
No, I do. I think it's going to be a hell of a matchup. And I think, whichever way the Chanticleers are playing above the rim right now, above their play. They've outpunted their coverage a little bit. And that coach, like you said, to be less than 12 months on the job, having him play at such a high level, and he's taken, again, it's, he's a chef who's taken the ingredients that he's been given and making a 5-star meal out of it. So, I hope people are paying attention to him. I hope this is something that people have their ears perked up about, and this could lead to bigger and better things even for him, because not a lot of coaches can do what he's doing right now at that program. And I give my hats off to him and the Chanticleers for having an incredible season so far. Now, though, let's talk about the coaching carousel. It's starting to turn, right? We're starting to see the coaching carousel in college football. We've seen a few releases in the NFL. We saw some in college football. South Carolina already hired Shane Beamer, which I was shocked on. I'll be honest with you. Sunday, when the news came down, I was like, the season has just ended. Like, how are we hiring a coach? The interview process, when did it take place? How did this happen? But South Carolina already naming Shane Beamer on Sunday to succeed Will Muschamp. Any initial reaction on that news happening so fast and so close to the end of the season for South Carolina?
I think the real thing there was South Carolina identifying somebody that they liked and respected, and then having some worry about what else could happen there. Would someone else get in the mix? And not saying it's going to happen, but they're, depending on what you read and who you pay attention to and things, there was a job potentially opening up a little north of there that Shane Beamer might have had his eye on. Straight beam to
I know Virginia Tech. It was all over Virginia Tech rumors.
Yeah,
I know.
So I mean,
Big Lock talked about it on the show on Friday.
In one phase, the Fuentes family is very happy that Shane Beamer went to South Carolina. Gets that off the radar, for Virginia Tech. But the knowledge of the area, the ability to recruit in a very, very hard area to recruit when you're looking at Clemson, Georgia, Virginia Tech, Virginia, North Carolina. I mean, just look at who's in your area and who you have to fight for, for these recruits over. I think they identified that was a strong point of his, identified that offense is a strong point of his, and felt that maybe, and it's something we've mentioned with coaching staffs and other things, it'll be interesting to see what he thinks of that coaching staff as a whole, right? Coming from a coaching tree family and knowing what coaches and families and things go through when these kind of situations occur. It'll be interesting if Shane Beamer had what kind of evaluation he shared with the athletic department and the hiring process about retaining, some of their guys. Who are some of the names of guys, that he would plan to go after, in the conference, or to add to his staff. Are they going to be recognizable names to SEC folks? Are they going to be recognizable names in the area? Because, I think you're going to see them potentially double down, with adding somebody on that staff who has another similar connection to the South and recruiting, because I've mentioned it several times. If or when Florida State is back competing, look no further than their running back coach, David Johnson, who is one of the premier recruiters in the country. You want to look at the success that LSU has had on the field and why the roster looks like it looks like. Look no further than Corey Raymond, who's been there. Look no further than when they had Frank Wilson on staff. You have to have, a direct, involvement in the pipeline at those schools in order to make headway and get yourself back in contention. South Carolina has plenty of resources. I would say right now, it hasn't worked with Tennessee yet. But them, and then is it going to be Kentucky's put some more into the program? What does a Vanderbilt do? Now, are they ever going to go all in on the football side as much as they do with basketball and baseball? Not only the financial commitment to the staff, but the program, or the venue, the circumstances, of what you're dealing with. I think South Carolina has a chance, and they certainly do believe that they should have a chance every so often to be, top three, not only top three on their side, but that they should be in the mix every once in a while to be going over the Georgia and Floridas, and they have not done that on the regular at all in recent times. This might be the reset where the head coach and the football department gets more than what they have in the past in terms of the support staff behind it, and how much money you're being given for your assistant coaches and for your program is just as important as how much money and who you hired as the head coach in the SEC.
Right. The headlines is all about the head coach and what he gets paid, but you're so right. It's who are you paying? How much are you paying your recruiting coordinators? How much are you paying your support staff and to develop these young kids and get them in place to be, NFL draft picks and fill in rosters and stuff, because that's all into recruiting. And I know that's one thing that's plagued UCLA for years is that they pay their head guy, but then cost of living and everything is so expensive in LA, they don't really pay a lot of their assistants. So therefore, it's hard to attract really good assistants to UCLA because, you're living in a shoebox for, $100,000 a year and you can't make the bills paid and make it all in. So if you do it in UCLA, USC or one of the other West Coast schools usually swipes you away really quick because only the head coach is getting paid there. And again, this is something that I think Russ Landy brought up yesterday and what you just brought up too, Beamer being a coach's kid and seeing how coaches get let go and staffs and the effect it has on, the program and other families around. How much will that weigh in on retention of coaching already on the staff? Being a kid that's seen that have to happen to so many families, will he be a guy who retains his staff a little bit? Because I think there are good coaches on staff. I just think it's going to be his judgment call on who he can work with, who he can't. Next coaching hire carousel that's interesting and something to talk about, obviously, because Urban Meyer's name is being mentioned around it, is Texas. Is Texas going to are they going to move on for Herman? Are they going to go after, Urban Meyer? Are they going to just, go for another Texas name, maybe somewhere that's tied to the University of Texas that bring him back, something like that? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean that that's a tough one because you're in that reset moment, in the sense of, you've got all the way to the finish line here with your recruiting class. You have your senior quarterback, and it just, it never locked in all the way to where, your expectations were. There's been a few, times that Texas has flirted, with the chance of, reaching, back to where they want to be. But I think, you're not there defensively, and you haven't been able to win the big game. And now I think, potentially the final, sort of, slamming the door on him was, man, losing that Evers kid, the number one recruit in the country, and he's a quarterback, and having him, decommit and then go, and go back closer to home and sign with Ohio State. I think that's a tough pill to swallow, for them. I think that was his sort of linchpin to holding on to the job, was that he had, potentially the next big thing coming, there. And, who knows? I mean, it's very hard at 187 and 32, it's like, man, they're flirting with a pretty good prospect, there in Urban Meyer. And is he ready for another, 3 to 5 year run, with things? If you hire Urban Meyer, one thing, he might win, but there's going to be some cleanup to do in aisle 4 when he leaves. And he's only going to be there for as much time as he wants to be there. So again, we're talking about all in. Texas has the resources to go in and have Urban Meyer and an all-star coaching staff, and let it ride, in that scenario. And I don't see Urban Meyer wanting to pull like the backdoor shenanigans and go to Michigan, or, I don't see him wanting that type of stuff. I think he'd rather, if he's going to go do something, he would go to a different state or a different, conference. And later on, if he's playing Florida or playing Ohio State, it'll just be what it is in that moment, and a one-off, scenario, bowl game or even national championship, should he get back to that level. But I think it's, there's a lot of, where there's smoke, there's something to it. They know they have to do something dramatic now to get on the map. And I think the recruiting thing, I think he could have survived that Oklahoma loss because they bounced back, played well in a couple other games. You can tell they haven't just laid down. I mean, K-State had played well in a lot of games, and then it was 66-27, against K-State. The freshman running back is the real deal. He finally got, the bulk of the work last week and, showed that he could be the next big thing, in terms of Texas running backs. But, for the most part, I think it's been underwhelming. So I don't think it's something that they'll double down on. I got a feeling if it's not Urban Meyer, it's not going to be Tom Herman at the helm after this season.
Yeah, I see Matt Stork 44 is in our chat. Thank you for throwing in some information. He said he was told Texas was back already, that Herman's going to be back for next year. I haven't seen that information. I've seen other information out there. So Matt Stork, appreciate you throwing that in there. We'll check that facts and see if it's going and what we see of it. But at the same time, a program like Texas that is a historic program, they don't want to be at the bottom. They want to be in that playoff mix, and it's been a long time since they've been mentioned in that category. And I know the backers and the supporters down there in Texas, all the donors, are tired of being on the outside looking in. They want to be on the inside. They want to be up where Alabama and even Texas A&M are being mentioned at this point in the season. So I see a move happening there at some point soon.
And you're right. The shift, when it comes to certain programs and certain situations, he is completely correct in his evaluation of things when Tom Herman's like, hey, I just got to take every day and handle my bit, because you know what? You're right, coach. It was in your hands. It is no longer in your hands, because I'll tell you what, let A&M go from being 5th to 4th and making the college football playoffs. Start putting your shit in your bag.
Yeah, exactly.
Start stuff in the bag. If A&M, Sam, there's your $20. I owed it to you. Start packing your stuff. If that happens, because it's going to be as simple as something along those lines to make that happen, because you're just so in that area of the amount of money we're talking about. And the focus and attention in that state. You're no longer playing against each other all the time. You're no longer in the same conference and things. But if the Aggies make the playoffs and you're sitting there with Tom Herman and they make it with Kellen Mond and his senior year, and you had your senior moment and it didn't happen, every little step is leading toward what happens next. And I don't believe that there's going to be a lot of people in there who believe that you have this on the right track for this not to be just the same issue a year from now, that you're 8-3, or, again, at some point, there's a lot of coaches that are getting that pass over and over again for finishing 9-3, 8-4, start off 5-0, start off 3-0, have a loss, win 4 more in a row, 2 bad losses, get to a decent bowl game. I don't see Texas as being a program that's going to just say that's their role in life. That's what they're going to accept, out of their coaching program, out of their college football program is, to sit there and be idling somewhere between 18 and 25 and sometimes not. And when they do get mentioned in the top 10, literally as soon as they play somebody on their schedule with similar ranking, they get dusted on the regular, is not the kind of program that I think most of the people see themselves as. Now, does that mean that, it's not all Tom Herman and some of the upper management should, there at the university should put on a different color glasses and see Texas for what it is right now and take a step back and say, all right, what do we really need to do, here to fix this program? But hey, there's a lot of kids that clearly do not see going to the University of Texas the way they did at one time.
Exactly. It's definitely slid from where it was. It used to be one of the top three, I would say, programs that you talked about all the time. The draft picks and everything coming out of Texas was a lot. You always had good draft picks coming out of there, and now you're barely having one or two. I know Ryan's in love with one of their tackles this year and stuff, but you're not. He's not. When I talk to Ryan about Texas football, it's not like, oh my God, they're inlaid with so many players. He's not like the Alabamas and the LSU's were last year and stuff. He's not talking like that. And at one point, I know my 18-year scouting career, Texas was talked about like that. I mean, they had corners, safeties, they had pass rushers, offensive linemen, they had running backs coming out of there. It was a program that you went shopping in and you went deep into the roster to know their backups, even because there's always some kind of special team demon hiding in the wings that just didn't get playing time because it was Texas, and you could find a guy that fill out your roster and do stuff. We're running a little over, John. I appreciate all your time this morning. What's a parting shot you got for the audience here as we start summing up this episode of the morning talk here on Draft Bible?
Yeah, I think it is the same as what we've mentioned several times when it's around the NFL draft time. If your board isn't correct, then you can't blame having you didn't have a bad draft on draft night, right? You didn't have a bad draft on the night of the draft. University of Texas has signed exactly one 5-star player in each of the last 3 recruiting classes. So you don't have a bad draft the night of the draft. You have a bad draft if your board is not correct and you do not get the right players. If you are a Power 5 conference team with the expectation to compete and win national championships, you are not signing one 5-star player per class in the last 3 years.
Right. Yep. No, you're absolutely right.
You got to identify them. You got to look at them. And then in college, you got to get them on campus.
Hey, by the way, University of Texas, you listening? Murphy and I are available. We can come in and fix this problem for you like that. Higher Draft Bibles crew. We come in, we roll into Texas from the Jersey Shore, from Arizona, from Louisiana. We'll bring the recruits to you. We'll bring that program back, baby. That's the way we do here. We can find them for you. Anyways, I want to say thank you.
You already got the Mavs on, little Mavs.
I got the Mavs on, baby. I'm ready to go. Give me a little burnt orange, baby. I'm all about the burnt orange. Let's get it going. But no, I want to thank John Murphy for everybody. I want to thank our listeners, our chat room people, Robin, Mad Stokes, Arthur, all you guys for getting up, spending time with us this morning. RIC, our hearts and our thoughts and our prayers are with you today. Sam, everybody up there in the Northeast, you got nothing but love coming your way today from us, holding it down here on the Draft Bible. Please join us again tomorrow where we're going to have more analysis. John will be on with Joe DeLeon and a nice big crew of folks there. And I'll be back Friday for Football Friday with y'all. We're out.